Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the International Fraud Awareness Week, looking at online scams webinar, hosted by the Iowa Secretary of State, Paul Pate, and the Better Business Bureau Institute for Marketplace Trust. My name is Ashley, and I'm the Business Services Outreach Specialist here at our office. And I'm being joined by Jacob, who is the Communication Specialist, and I will introduce Mark shortly as well. And so please be aware that this webinar is being recorded for future use, but your name and details will be hidden from that. And every participant is going to receive a link to rewatch this webinar. At the end of the webinar today, to conclude, we will have a moderated Q&A session. So feel free to post your questions in the Q&A chat box. Just make sure it's the Q&A one. And we'll do our best to answer as many of those as possible. Additionally, we will have a few polls throughout this webinar that we'll launch just to get a better idea of experiences that you may have had with fraud before. With that, I'm going to welcome Secretary of State Paul Pate for some remarks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Iowa Secretary of State Paul Pate. And I want to thank you for joining us this morning for our webinar during International Fraud Awareness Week. We appreciate having some of your time and look forward to the Better Business Bureau Institute for Marketplace Trust presentation regarding online scams, fraud, scammer tactics, and how you can protect yourself from this terrible crime. In 2021, the Federal Trade Commission reported consumers lost more than $5.8 billion to fraud. As online scams increase, it's important to better your knowledge of the threats and to be proactive to better protect yourself or your business from fraudsters. With greater awareness comes greater preparation to identify and fight fraud. Welcome and thank you to Mark for joining us today.
All right, thank you to Secretary Pate for those remarks. And now I'm happy to welcome our presenter, Mark Batchelor of Better Business Bureau Institute for Marketplace Trust, for a beneficial and very timely presentation today. Mark Batchelor has served in nonprofit outreach for over 16 years, tackling issues involving cybercrime, financial stability, senior services, trafficking survivors, and persons with disabilities. He is driven to help people impacted by online scams and fraud to find resources for recovery. Mark currently serves as Senior Director of Programs and Outreach for the Better Business Bureau Institute for Marketplace Trust, the charitable foundation of the International Association of Better Business Bureaus, where he oversees programming designed to educate consumers and businesses about how to identify signs of fraud and avoid scams. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mark, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Jacob. And thank you to the Secretary for his remarks. I'm excited to be here. I'm going to share my screen, so it may just take 1 second while I get that going for you. How does that look? Can you see that, Ashley?
We've got a good screen, Mark.
Good.
Perfect. So hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm excited to be talking to you today. Jacob and Ashley were talking with myself before we started today and said this is probably the perfect time to do it because we're coming into the holiday season and a lot of people are going to go online looking for deals. A lot of people are going to go online looking to connect with old friends and family. And I want to keep you safe online when you do that. So we're going to talk about some things that will do that. But first, let me tell you quickly, because you may not have heard of the BBB Institute for Marketplace Trust. I hope you've heard of the BBB. It's a great organization. What we are is the educational foundation nonprofit for them, and we do a different type of work. Next, please. There we go. We have a mission to educate and protect consumers, establish best practices for business, and solve complex market problems. What that means basically is we want to create a trusted marketplace where consumers and businesses prosper and everybody does so safely. So we do that in two ways. We create programs and initiatives that and awareness campaigns that have two goals. One is to empower consumers with things like financial fraud education, like I'm doing with you now, military and veterans initiatives, where we go out and we talk to military, veteran, and their families about what they're seeing, how they're being impacted. And I'm going to show you some of the ways that they're being impacted. And then reporting and prevention tools, which I'm going to show you about too. And then we also take care of businesses by with those reporting tools, so they know what's going on in their areas and what consumers are being impacted by. We talk about business ethics. We talk about social enterprise, but we also do reporting. This is a big part of what we do. We do a lot of research on these issues. And today, the first half of my presentation is going to be breaking down some of the findings from our 2021 risk report and our online scams report to show you exactly what we're seeing from the data that comes in from our Scam Tracker reporting tool, which is open to the public and open to businesses to report anytime that they've been involved in a scam or even approached by a scam, so that we know what's going on and we share that information with sources like the FTC to contribute to the numbers that Secretary Pate had quoted. That $5.8 billion is a lot of money, but as you can probably guess, that's probably just a fraction of what's out there in terms of loss and people impacted, because not enough people report these kind of crimes. Some people just see a scam in their inbox or on their text and they delete it right away, so that goes unreported. Some people may feel ashamed that they fell for something or were involved in a scam, so they don't report. And other people just don't know where to report. So hopefully I can help with that today too. But I'm going to focus just today, like Ashley said, on online scams. I'm going to put that into two buckets: online purchase scams, things that are online shopping related, maybe counterfeit sites, maybe imposters, and then impersonation scams. That's a scam when somebody pretends to be a well-known organization or person to steal money or data or something else of value. These, as we go along these, I'm going to show you some statistics, but hopefully I'm going to liven it up in a way that's a little interesting to you. And I think if you look at the slides I'm showing, you're going to recognize a lot of these types of scams. And I'm sure that either you have been impacted by them or know somebody that's been approached by these types of scams. So let's start with online scams in general. Through our data, the tactics have shifted drastically during the past several years. We started tracking data in 2015. And since then, online crime has risen 86.6% since 2015. Scams perpetrated by traditional means, phones and in-person scams, they've dropped. And that's kind of to be expected, because we spend a lot of time now as a society online, and we do a lot of stuff on our computers, on our phones. And so we're more likely to be interacting that way with the criminals. And I'm going to show you some of the ways that happens, but I'm going to show you just how prevalent this is right now. How common are these scams? When I show you the types of scams, you're going to recognize them and know just how common they are. But more than a third of all scams reported last year to our platform were online purchase scams. That's quite a lot. And almost 3 out of every 4 were targeted, people who were targeted reported losing some kind of money. So not only are they out there in large numbers, but they're effective. People are losing money to these, and we want to make sure that we can put a stop to that. Online scams were more likely to result in monetary loss than other types of scams, as opposed to somebody calling and saying they're from the IRS or something like that. And then 46% of them reported spending more time browsing on social media. So these online scammers are finding us where we are. They're coming to Facebook, they're coming to Instagram, they're coming to all these other places where we're spending time, because they know that's where the targets are. Again, how common are in the last year? Scams reported dropped a bit, but the median loss, the average median amount of money that people are losing, went up. Part of this is because not enough people are reporting. Like I said, it doesn't mean the scammers are out there. It doesn't mean they're not being touched. It just means more people need to report this. Consumers are reporting, like I said, online purchase scams are the most common way that they're getting impacted, followed by cryptocurrency scams and employment scams. So we saw a lot of that during the pandemic when people were looking for new employment. That shot way up. And businesses are not immune to this. They're seeing different types of scams. They're seeing fake invoice and supplier bill scams. They're seeing bank and credit card company imposters, so emails and communications from people reporting purportedly to be from banks and credit card companies, and worthless problem-solving services. This is, do you want to boost your search engine optimization? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And it turns out there's not a lot there for these businesses. When they're online, most people, the ways that these online scams have been working, it says 74% of people said the problem was they did not receive a product or service they purchased. So maybe they saw somebody on Facebook Marketplace who was selling a memorabilia jersey, and they bought it, and they got nothing in return, or they got counterfeit or junk in return. Other people said they got a product or service, but it was lower quality than promised. I don't know if any of you have been in that situation where something looks really good when you're scrolling down your feed, and the online store looks legitimate, and you order it and it's really flimsy and low quality material. And other people, again, they said they received the product or service, but it was different than described. Not just low quality, but a totally different type of product. But wording has made people fall for the buy. So shopping scams look like you'd expect. You've heard of these things before. I'm sure some of you have seen this or heard about it from friends and family. Two of the most common types of online shopping scams and counterfeit scams. 13% of people reported, like I said, counterfeit or lower quality products. Of that, apparel and footwear were the most common. So that's, people looking for genuine Gucci or genuine something else, and they receive a cheap knockoff in return. And then puppy scams and pet scams are also very popular. I mean, incredibly common. And French bulldogs and Yorkies were the most common. These are people who pretend they have an animal to sell online. They go back and forth, and then they never deliver on this. But really, the only reason I have this slide up, other than the interest in that, is when you put puppies on, people pay more attention. So hopefully I've got you now, and we're going to just keep on talking about other types of scams. And if we need to go back to the puppies later, we will. So how are these scammers finding us? It's like I said, we're online, we're surfing, and they're finding us where we're at. Some people, the most popular means of contact as reported by our platform was websites. So they found a site, it may have been a counterfeit site, or they may have found it on their newsfeed in their social media scroll. These are the top two most ways. People are finding fake ads online, they're finding counterfeit sellers, they're finding people who say they have something but really have nothing to deliver online. And then after that, email, phone, and text messaging are the most common. Internet messaging like WhatsApp has really risen in the last couple years. The web is most popular. Now, it's funny, the text and phone are also popular. It's a little less common, unfortunately, for people to do it, but it's the highest dollar amounts lost. So when you get those text messages that say, hey, here's a great deal, fewer people are finding it that way, but more people are losing money when they engage with that text or with that internet message, which I think is pretty interesting. And then further down towards the bottom of the list is the old school, mail, telephone, and other means. Some of the other tactics they do, like I said, they claim to be a legitimate organization. I'm going to talk about imposter scams in a minute. They offered a great price. They told they were needed to act quickly. That's making sure, this deal is not going to last long, act now. But they generally use tactics that seem very appealing to the consumer, right? Unlike other types of scams, like the IRS scam, where they try to scare you into paying money or else something bad's going to happen. These online shopping scams, they use enticement over fear to get people to act, the carrot over the stick. because people want something of value. Some people want a good deal, especially as we're moving into the holidays. People are looking for those Black Friday deals, those Prime Day deals, and people are looking to take advantage of that. So again, like I said, motivation was big. What are those motivations? Lower sales price and discounts. That was the most common. But also they saw a great image on the website. They saw something that looked good. And like I had said earlier, once they received that, could be lower quality. It could be a different quality altogether of product. Availability of hard to find items. We saw a lot of this right during the pandemic when people were looking for things like toilet paper and things like paper towels. They went online to find them and they were gone. So scammers had a field day sending up fake storefronts saying, we have these items, pay us. And then altogether people were let down because they found out these were counterfeit sites and they could not deliver as promised, which was really hard for a lot of people during the pandemic. And then payment methods makes a big difference when we're dealing with online shopping and online shopping scams. So before you do so, you really need to take some factors into consideration. You need to take in factor, is the site you're shopping on secure? Does it have that HTTPS in the address bar or that little padlock to show that it's been encrypted? When you share your credit card information, you want to look for that. Things like credit card payments and online payment systems like PayPal, they are the safest. And then the things that are less commonly used are also the highest risk, highest money loss. So if people are paying by money order or cash, there's a higher amount lost there because it's harder to get that back, which I'll show you on this slide. Now, when you pay with something like through a credit card or a PayPal, they have policies in place for fraud prevention that make it a lot easier for somebody who has lost money to a scammer to get that money back. Credit cards have protections. This just happened to me last week when I was traveling. My credit card was skimmed and charge was on there. I called the credit card company and they were very good about taking that charge off and handling it for me, and I didn't have to do anything. PayPal is the same way. They're very good at that. And people report being satisfied with getting that money back. More dangerous are things like your debit account because that's hooked directly into your bank account. It doesn't mean you can't get your money back, but they may have to lock the account for a while. And just imagine not being able to access your bank account for a matter of 6 to 10 business days. A lot of people are in situations where I'm in a situation where that's not an option, that you can't do that. And then as you go down the line, it gets a little harder. And you'd be surprised, things like Zelle, which is very popular, a banking app, they don't have the protections in place that make it easy to get your money back. So always read the details of what the policies are on these formats and use them in a way that you feel is responsible, because it's not always easy to get your money back. So now I'm going to talk about impersonation scams. Like I said, it's a type of online purchase scam, but not solely online. We can find impersonators. You can find, counterfeit goods in all types of cities and all types of towns. But I want to talk about what this means. Go to the next one. Oops. Apologies. Go to the next one here. I won't play the video. But I will share it with Ashley to push out for you. It's just a little PSA. I'd rather talk about the types of impersonation scams. Things like account integrity. That's when hackers have gotten access to your account and you get a message saying the only way to protect this is to buy a gift card and share the gift card number and the PIN on the back. You'll get something either through your text message or your email saying they're from account services and there's suspicious activity. And I think a lot of people have seen that nowadays. The best thing to do when you get that is either to report it or delete it altogether. Tech support scams are very similar. I was just talking about this before we went on today. A lot of times it's very common to Google or Bing or whatever search you use to say, how do I hook this up? Or I'm having a problem with this device. And you find phony phone numbers up there. And you don't know that they're phony because they look legitimate. It looks like a true Amazon site. It looks like a true Bank of America site with a tech support number. And you call it up and scammers are posing as a representative and to ask you to take over your screen. So what they do is they seize control of your screen for a while and they plant malware on there, they steal information off of it. They do all types of things that will take value for them and leave you in a really bad situation. Rewards or prizes. I don't know how many of you have gotten texts that say, congratulations, you've won, or we love your business, so we're congratulating you with a gift card. These are things that promise money or maybe for reviewing a product. And they ask you to either fill out a form or click a link. What they're doing with that is stealing your information or they're planting malware on your computer. So you have to be very careful for that and make sure that things come from a reputable source, and never click on a link in your text if you're unsure of it, because we all have that instinct to go into our text right away. Just take a beat, which I'll talk about some of those ways to prevent this. QR codes are also very popular. You might find them around town saying, scan this for information on how to keep your park clean, or, scan this for a cool app. Be very, very careful. A lot of times it's very easy to embed code into the QR that will take you to a fake site. It'll take you to malware. It'll take you to things that will steal your personal information. Not saying all QR codes are bad. I go into a restaurant now and they have those on the table instead of their menus. 9 times out of 10, that's great. You just have to be careful about where they're coming from and making sure that they're coming from the restaurant or they're coming from the museum or wherever you're scanning your QR code, and make sure that it's the true one. Order confirmation is way popular now, and you're going to see a lot of these as we enter the holidays and we order more online and perhaps forget what and when we ordered things. I get texts all the time saying, your package is on the way, click here to track it. Or there's been a problem with your delivery, click here for details. It's just, again, a way to get you to click and go to a dangerous site. So you're going to want to avoid that. And surveys. Stores love giving out surveys, usually on their receipts. If you get an unsolicited one in your text, you might want to think twice about clicking on it. Because scammers can impersonate logos and brands. So make sure that we're looking at the right thing. And like I said, they do impersonate brands. Trustworthy businesses are the #1 impersonated thing. Amazon, Walmart, Microsoft, I think Dick's Sporting Good is coming up strong now with impersonated brands. And then after that, potential employers and puppy breeders are all top impersonated. And people who lost money to a scammer were twice as likely to lose it to a scammer that was impersonating a brand, because sometimes it's very, very hard to tell. But companies are starting to take it seriously now. I mentioned Amazon. They are the #1 impersonated brand, followed by Social Security Administration. You get a lot more of those over the phone as you do with Publishers Clearinghouse. But PayPal, Medicare, these are all popular things that we use every day. So to impersonate it well means that it increases our risk of falling into their enticement. So we want to be careful about that. But like I said, companies like Amazon are taking this seriously. And we've actually partnered with them on an impersonation scams campaign. So if you go to bbb.org /impersonation scams, there's a whole lot of great information there and some videos that you can share with your friends and family, some scam prevention tips that we've partnered on, and we're pushing out through social media, we're pushing out through PSAs, just to raise awareness of this coming into the holidays and making sure that people are aware of this stuff going on. And Amazon wants to protect themselves, right? They want to reduce the work of scammers using their brand, not only in their marketplace, but online in other places like social media. I missed the first poll. I'm sorry, Ashley. I got all going, but we're going to do a poll now. If it's okay to skip to poll number 2, can we do that, Ashley?
Yep, that works for me. I'll go ahead and launch it now. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, I apologize for that. I'm just going to ask people about the impact. So please fill out the poll when it comes on the screen. Have you or your business ever been impacted by fraud? Yeah. Not a lot of responses, but here we go. So far as 100%, because I'll tell you, fraud is everywhere. Even if it doesn't impact you directly, I'm sure a friend or a family has seen this. It's happened to my family. And like I said, it happened to me just last week with my credit card, although that was a different type of fraud. We're not immune to this kind of stuff. All right. Well, just what I expected, we're all impacted. I'm going to share with you some of the groups that are most impacted as reported by our platform. It doesn't mean they're the only ones, but I just want to share some notable information about these groups. For the riskiest scam, we're talking about students. Gender. By gender, women and men both equally impacted by online purchase scams. We're seeing a lot of that. And then it changes a little bit. Some more men are falling into cryptocurrency scams than women, who are engaging with employment scams over cryptocurrency scams and home improvement scams. So there's a lot of similarities there, and gender doesn't necessarily, we found, impact one way or another the susceptibility for falling for a scam. I do want to mention students, though, next, because it used to be younger people were less impacted by scams, and the older generation more impacted, and the older generation used to lose more money, probably because they had more to lose at times, because they have 401ks and vacation properties and investments, things like that. But now we're seeing a shift where students are being just as impacted by older adults. They're engaging with online purchase scams, possibly because they spend so much time online, on social media, on websites, where scammers are coming to find them. And then cryptocurrency scams. Young people, such as students, are early adopters to technology. They like new things. Cryptocurrency is new. It's a way to make money. And there's not a lot of solid information about safety with cryptocurrency scams out there that they're finding. So perhaps they're engaging too much with that. And then employment scams for the non-students, and then students are falling for fake checks. So this is something that has really risen in the last couple of years. And as the scammers move online, where the students and the young people are, they're going to be impacted more. Military consumers, it's very targeted group. There's a lower impact depending on if you're a military veteran or a non-military or a spouse. Again, the common thread here is online purchase scams are enticing people and pulling them in for engagement. After that, military spouses and veterans, they're looking for employment. Military spouses move around a lot. Perhaps they go from job to job and they're looking for something work from home, say. Employment scams are out there to really pull them in. Whereas non-military, the next big thing is cryptocurrency scams. Again, we've seen cryptocurrency scams rise dramatically in the last 2 years, and the way that people engage with this. And active duty military, those who are currently serving, more likely to report losing money to online purchase scams, with almost 85% of them reporting a monetary loss. So they may not engage as much as some other people, but when they do, they're losing a lot more money more frequently. And this is something that we at the Institute are concerned about, and we do research studies behind this, and we also go out and engage our local BBBs to go out in the community with information that we share with them, and or not just the community, they also go on to bases and installations where they can engage with the military community directly and educate them about some of the riskier scams for their demographic. And then businesses, I want to, if there are business owners out there, I forgot to ask the poll at the beginning, so I'm not sure. That's my fault, but I just didn't want to leave them out. Businesses are impacted by this stuff, like I said, fake invoice suppliers. But what they're reporting is not always the same as what's the riskiest for them. Government agency imposters are the second most reported by businesses. Perhaps somebody says they're from the FTC or the SEC, and they need information, or they threaten action. And a small business may not know some of the details and the red tape, and they may engage with these type of scammers and lose money. But it's not just money that we're talking about here, and this part's really important because we always talk about scams and fraud as in resulting loss of money. But there's a lot of non-financial impact here that I want to talk about. If you have been a victim of identity theft or know somebody that has, the time that it takes, an investment in untangling that web, straighten out your accounts, straighten out your credit, straightening out your new, getting maybe a new social security card, getting a new driver's license. All of that stuff takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of stress, takes a lot of legal wrangling. So there's legal issues, but also if somebody commits fraud in your name, that may open up a can of worms in terms of legal issues that get you involved in the legal system in ways which you don't want. If you're active duty military, it may impact your clearance level if you end up owing a lot of money or if your identity's been compromised, which can result in loss of promotion. There's credit damage, like I said. It may impact your employment if you've engaged with a scam through your employer or just gotten into a way where your credit damage was such they could not retain employment. Your reputational damage, we see that with social media scams all the time. A lot of like cyberbullying, we see a lot of identity theft, which really hurts people's reputation, and that goes back to time and stress. Potential earnings, there's just so many ways in which people are impacted beyond the financial. So this really can turn people into spiraling out. They can turn them depressed and have worse consequences. So when we talk about fraud and we talk about scammers, it's easy to say, oh, well, somebody fell for that. They fell for that. But as people who deal with people who deal with those who have been impacted by this, it's important to know that you can't put a stigma on there. You need to have a little bit of empathy because their lives are impacted. And as indicated, 100% of respondents in this poll said they've been impacted by scams. So nobody's immune. It's just the scammers are very smart, and they have tricky ways of impacting people. And so we want to protect ourselves, right? So what do we do? Factors that help. Most of the time when people did not lose money, they went with their gut. They said something didn't feel right. And so I didn't engage with the scammer. And that's really great instinct. Sometimes you have to go with the instinct. The next biggest thing was education. When people knew about methods that scammers used, perhaps they saw a webinar like this, perhaps they read it online, knowing before engaging is really powerful. They may have researched the type of scam they were targeted for, and I'm going to show you ways that you can research a scam. They knew about the particular type of scam. All this thing is very common. Education is the key. Knowing about what these scammers do and how they operate helps you prevent losing money, even if you do engage initially. It's helpful in helping you pull back and not lose money. The ways that people do this research, they searched about a business on Google, but like I said, it's make sure that you're finding a legitimate source. If you Google how to hook up Alexa, you may find one of those imposter tech supports. But look at sources like the BBB. Look at other sources to codify the legitimacy of that organization or of that person if you can. Scam Tracker I'm going to tell you about is a really helpful tool with this. People considered, before making an online purchase, positive customer reviews. You have to be careful though. Fake reviews are a plague on the internet sometimes. So you want to do some other stuff like search the BBB, look at return policies, make sure that that website that you're on has a history, it has an address, it has a contact number for problems. You want to make sure that they have a visible return policy that makes sense. You want to do your homework before engaging with a company that you've never heard of or looks too good to be true. And speaking of looks too good to be true, I'll just do quickly 5 red flags to look for before I talk about Scam Tracker. Phantom riches. When somebody dangles prospect of wealth, that's a red flag. If they say you can make money, double your investment, a guaranteed return on investment, things like that. Cryptocurrency exchanges, the crooked ones do this all the time. You want to check it out. Check with, if you have a financial advisor, check online. Check with FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulation Authority. They have a way to check out financial advisors for legitimacy. They're a great partner. Just do your homework. Credibility. This is another thing that they dangle in front of you. They pretend to be a source that is legitimate and verified. They say, oh, we've been verified. We're the #1 company that does this, and the #1 for that, and award winning. What does that mean? What award did they win? Is the citation credible? You're going to want to look at that because people want to deal with people of authority. So if somebody says, I'm the vice president of this company and I think this is a great deal for you. Okay, but make sure that company's legitimate and make sure that person's legitimate. Social conscience, right? Every social consensus, rather. Social consensus, just ginning you up and say, everybody else wants this, it's got to be something good, right? If everyone at my church is investing in this, it's probably fine. Peer pressure is a strong tactic, right? We can probably all think of examples of that. There's a pitch, join in. All media, all advertising, but a lot of advertising is centered around that. Like, get in this feeling. You want to get that energy. Be part of it. It's great to be part of something. Just make sure it's legitimate. And then reciprocity. They say do a small favor for a big favor in return. A lot of this you see with financial scams. They say if you make this small investment, you can get a lot back. or just fill out this survey and you'll get a gift card. Look out for things like that because it looks like a small ask, but it ends up costing you money or data or personal information. And then finally, scarcity, back to those rolls of toilet paper I was talking about. If it's rare or scarce, then it must be more valuable. You see this with not just pandemic items, but you see this with toys around Christmas time, right? There's always that hot toy that people want. You can be sure that there's counterfeit sites built up around that, promising that you can get these toys and it's not going to materialize in the end. The scarcity tactic is intended to escalate emotions, get you ready to act. If it sounds too good to be true, it's a red flag. Just always remember that if an offer sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. Real quick, prevention tips: don't make a purchase based on customer reviews alone. Do your homework, do the research. But remember, the source of your research is important. It's not just BBB that that I'm recommending. BBB absolutely is the source I use even before I've had this job. But check with legitimate websites. If you're doing a charity, check with charity.org or Charity Navigator. Just make sure that who you're dealing with is legitimate. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. I can't say that too often enough. Be careful about purchasing sought after products like that toilet paper or that toy, and avoid making quick purchases while browsing social media. It's so easy when you're on your phone to get up there and say, oh, that looks cool, I'm going to buy that, click. Just make sure it's a legitimate site. There are a lot of fake ads on social media, and we want you to be careful of that. Use secure transactions, like I said. Make sure that you have the option to get your money back if something goes downhill. Choose your online payment system carefully, same reason. And don't believe everything you see. Scammers can and will mimic an Amazon logo, a BBB logo, or a website that looks legitimate but might be a word or a character off. Just make sure. Now, I'm going through these fast, but you're going to have this access to this PowerPoint, so you can look at this at your leisure. But because I wanted to talk about Scam Tracker real quick before we end. I'm sorry I'm taking up too much time, but it's a reporting and prevention platform at bbb.org/scam tracker, where people can report something that's happened to them or almost happened to them, and access reports, read about other scams to find out if what they're experiencing is legitimate or not. If that puppy breeder that contacted you is legitimate, you can read similar stories and say, oh, that wasn't legitimate. I'm going to save my money. And Scam Tracker saved approximately 31 million just last year. But again, that might be a low number. It has a user-friendly experience, an advanced search function. I'll show you real quick, like this. You can look up a scam by the email that was used to solicit, the website that they sent you, the phone number they used, the scam type, and we have a glossary of what the scam types are, but there's a list that is pretty much self-explanatory to help you choose the right things. You can report a scam for someone else if you're a caregiver or case manager or a business owner. This is very helpful. And then just a series of quick questions helps you report a scam in a way that's helpful for law enforcement and FTC and the BBBs to take action on it. Here's a example of the scam type definition. So it makes it very easy for a user, even if they're not familiar with scams and things like that. And then again, you can help inform others. You can share your scam experience online via social media so other people can learn about it. And you can see on the screen here what the scam report looks like. You can fully describe what happened to you. You can give information about the email that was used. And then it goes right to the BBB in the area that's impacted. So those BBBs validate the report, so people aren't making malicious reports or correctly reporting a business complaint as a scam before it gets published, so that these are really clean data. I hurried it up at the end there, Ashley, in case anybody had any questions, but here's my information as well. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you think of something after the webinar and you have a question or you'd like some information from the BBB. I'm always happy to help. So Ashley, I can turn it over to you for questions because I can't see if there's any comments.
Yep. Thank you, Mark. It was a great presentation. Appreciate that. Okay, so it looks like we have a question from Eric. Has BBB seen any trends in scam targeting since COVID? That's a great question.
Yes, there's a huge, COVID saw a huge spike, and that's where the biggest, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact number right now, but that's where we saw that big jump in online scams because people were spending so much time at home and they were looking for items, like I said, that were in scarce supply. They were looking for new ways to get groceries, new ways to get things that they couldn't go out to the store for. And I know this isn't consumer based, but it's a very important type of scam. It's the romance scams. We saw that increase dramatically too, because people were trapped in their homes and looking for ways to connect with others. So there was increased time on social media, increased time on dating apps and things like that, where people were being preyed upon by scammers who were trying to use their affection and their emotions to get information. So yeah, the pandemic was a big time for scammers.
Thank you. And then how can we get the PowerPoint? So I'm going to be sharing the recording of this webinar in an email to everyone that registered. So the PowerPoint slides will be in that recording, and then leave Marcus sending me some additional resources as well. So I'll send those along with that email.
And before I send you my final, I'm going to add a link to that research page too. So if you are a business owner or somebody who likes data, you can access our research reports and see where all this is coming from.
Great, that's very helpful. Thank you. And then if anyone else has questions, we still have some time, so just put those in the Q&A chat box there. I will also be sending out a feedback survey with the information from Mark in this recording as well. And that can help us get like a better idea of how your experience was today.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that that Secretary Pate is engaged in this type of issue because it impacts everybody, not just in Iowa, but everywhere, as you've seen. And the more that our lawmakers and our leaders can address it and know it's an issue and help their constituents with information, I think that's great.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for the work you do.
Yep. I think that the work you do is very important, and so we appreciate this opportunity to collaborate on this as well. Looks like we have another question. Okay, so this one is about reporting fraud. So Mark, is there a deadline for reporting fraud?
No, though if there's a big monetary loss, the more the quicker you are to report it, the better the likelihood of getting your money back would be. So like in my case, when I just had my credit card skimmed, I reported that to my credit card that same evening, and then they were able to do it. I would encourage the use of Scam Tracker, but it's not actionable. Those BBB, unless it's something that's localized to BBB, it's not a law enforcement tool. It doesn't go to help. So I would also follow that up with reporting to either the FTC or the IC3, which is the Internet Crime Complaint Center, if it's a big money dollar loss, because FBI can then take that information, and even if they can't get your money back, they can use morsels of what they're learning to make a case against scammers. If they see scams in other parts of the country, they can make a big case and prosecute, which is really helpful. The this tracker is a great tool.
That's great. And looks like we might have one more. Let's see. Okay. So we have another question, Mark. If we report to BBB, is there a certain dollar amount of the scam that you're interested in?
No, actually, you can even report if you didn't engage. If you just received a suspicious email, say, we encourage you to report that as well, because that helps warn other people. So even if you didn't fall for it, somebody can read that report and say, oh, that sounds like that's what happened to me. I'm not going to do this. And I talked to a Scam Tracker user that's exactly what happened. So he didn't engage with it. So any information is helpful, not just to us, but just to know like how prevalent these scams are. Like I said, this stuff goes underreported. So the more information we have from the public, the more we know what the problem is. And when law enforcement and lawmakers see that the problem's big, they're more likely to act on it.
It's a very good point. Thank you, Mark.
Great questions. Yeah.
They are good questions. If anyone else has any more questions, we still have some time. And then I know there were some updates to the Scam Tracker recently. Mark, do you want to talk about some of that?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Scam Tracker was mostly for reporting. It was good, like I said, to read reports and stuff like that. But we want to use it for prevention too. So we made it easier not only for people to report them, like I said, it's that guided questions that makes it easier for people to figure out what bucket to put their scam in, but it's easier to search for those scams. So you can just search by puppy scam, or you can search by investment scam and find all that stuff and read about those instances. So it builds that education that I was talking about. People are like, okay, this is a scam, this is a scam. If I see that in the future, it's gonna help me. But we've also made it easier to do it on phone, because people are doing everything by phone now. So it looks a lot better on the phone. The reports come out better. So the data that we use to create these reports, I think is going to be a lot stronger. And it just looks nicer. It feels easier to use, and that's what we wanted people to have.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that, and that like the education became an even bigger part of it. I think that's great.
Yeah,
So,
that's key.
Okay, here we go. Does BBB have resources about talking to aging parents about scams? That's also a great question.
That's a great question, and that's one that's near to my heart. BBB.org has articles about scammers, elderly scams, and things like that. That's the way you phrase that, though, is great. Like talking to the others about that. Nothing specific. I mean, there's the education. You can take that information and present it to your aging parent. But that's more work that we're going to be doing in the Institute. We have a program called Fighting Financial Fraud, where we go out and do presentations to the community, including seniors and caregivers and agencies that serve them. And we train. It's a train the trainer, and we are talking to those trainers about what's the best way to engage these people, so you don't make them feel uncomfortable. But I would say, cut out the shame. Don't say, I can't believe you fell for that. Say, I'm sorry this happened. What can we do to prevent it? Or, hey, I read about this great thing. Sometimes people don't like to hear from their loved ones enough. Like they're more likely to push them away and say, okay, stop with hectoring me. But you say, hey, the BBB gave me some great information. Let me tell you about it. If it's coming from a third party, they might be more in tune to listening if they weren't in the first place. Yeah.
Yep, I think that's some very good points there as well. I guess I have a question. So what about like healthcare scams online? Or I know that would be something probably growing a lot due to like the increased telehealth and the online patient portals. And can you kind of just tell me about like how that landscape is right now? And
Yeah, now's like the busy time because it's a Medicaid enrollment time. We see it around then, and enrollment for the ACA. All kinds of imposters looking to give you great deals on this stuff. The majority of them, I believe, are still old-fashioned phone scams, possibly because they impact older adults, and they're still more likely to pick up a phone and trust the person on the other end. But you do see a lot of counterfeit sites online promising great Medicaid rates, great health insurance that people are looking for. That's when it's really important to do your homework. Make sure if it says it's from the government, go to the government site and not like an auxiliary site. Make sure it has that .gov at the end if you're enrolling. Or check with somebody. Every community, I believe, has an area agency on aging. Their personnel are great at answering questions like that. Your local elder hotline, if you have one. Ask them questions about legitimacy, and they can help you answer the questions right.
great, thank you.
Yeah.
I think we are almost out of time. So I just want to thank you again, Mark, for joining us and for the very helpful information. And I want to thank Jacob as well for working with me on this, and Mark, obviously, for your work, and then everyone that attended and took time out of your day. We really appreciate it. And I'm glad you joined us today. So thank you.
Thank you all, and thanks for the audience for some great questions. Really astute and issues I care about. So I'm glad we're all on the same page. Great.
Thanks, everyone. And yep, like Mark said, great questions. Have a good rest of your day.